need to engage in micro research so that we are able to address these issues. Then we also have the opportunity for professional growth. For professional growth, when we start out with this, when we do the research grants, we are able to grow professionally, contribute to the global science, or contribute to findings out there, or what people have found concerning a particular issue. So all this, you can achieve it even with a micro research grant. So some people may be wondering, how do I actually think about a particular research problem? Already we've mentioned that it's within the community or the area of your work and expertise. But this particular slide is bringing to us the diverse opportunities we can have to participate in research. Apparently, there is emerging healthcare challenges. Excuse me a little. Sorry about that. I was saying that there are some areas that you can look out for to help you have an idea of where you can start to think, niche where you can start to develop your idea from. We have microbiome since this is one of the emerging communities. You can actually find a research question further through given research calls that would come up to sort of give you funds, and then you're able to address this particular problem. Then you can also think about an idea in the diagnostic gaps that are present in the tropical diseases. As people who are working in labs and dealing with all sorts of tropical diseases, you can actually have research questions that are around improving maybe the screening of these diseases or the diagnostic process of these diseases. So you can come up with ideas in that area that would require you to apply for specific grants and impact your community in that aspect. Then there are some problems that could actually require large-scale research. But of course, you may find that with your micro research, you're able to provide information that would later feed into that large-scale research question. So you can start small if you know of an idea whereby it would require huge amounts and a longer period of study. You can come out and start small with your micro research idea, and you're able to address that. Then the other area that you can think through is the Sustainable Development Goals. I have put them just here on the slide. There are 17 of them, but you can come up with an idea that touches any of these aspects here. And for your information, most of the grant calls that are out there really want you to express your idea and how it fits into these goals. So it's very, very important that you abreast yourself with each and every one of these goals so that you can see how you can fit in these particular goals. So there's a link there that you can sort of look at and read more about those goals. So this being a CPD session, we have quizzes that are made within the presentation. And how we do it, how we are going to do it is that you read this question, come up with your answer, and then you drop it in the chat. And then after around 1 minute, I'll be able to flash the answer so that you can check with yourself. So the first question was that, what is the primary purpose of micro research in laboratory medicine? And from what we've discussed prior. You'd want to find out, is it to replace large-scale research projects? Is it to address specific local health issues? Or is it to focus on the theoretical advancements in science? Or is it to conduct multinational studies? So you have just, I think, even 30 seconds to drop your answers in the chat. Kindly don't write in the slides. Okay. I'm not sure what answers you have put, but you can sort of check yourself out as this is the answer. It is B. And the goal of the micro research is to basically help us to address specific local health challenges, because these micro researches are intended to tackle those very small scale specific issues that would impact our communities. All right, so of course, with grant writing, you need to prepare yourself. This image basically just shows you that yes, money is involved, but it is a lengthy process. As you can see, some of the dices are showing some gear-like kind of images, then a graph, then a piece, a pie chart piece, and then money. So it's a process and it's not a walk in the park. You need to prepare yourself for you to be able to attract this kind of funds, and then you'll be able to conduct that particular research. So here is the grant writing process, and I'll take us through each item as we'll be able to sort of bring ourselves to understand how this process really works out. So the first thing in grant writing is identifying a research problem. And I have highlighted on some of the areas where to look when you're trying to identify a research problem. It is a very important step, very foundational to the whole process, because it helps you to get that knowledge gap or that idea that you need to actually improve. It may involve you reviewing some literature and also consulting some stakeholders. Maybe you could consult your lab manager, you can consult the hospital director if you're in a health setting like that. You can consult as many people to get this idea, or some people right now fear to even speak out their idea because they think someone is going to steal it. But remember, this is a very big process. How you conceive it and how you design it is very, very important. And you have to align your research problem with the current priorities in the field. So you cannot be an island. You need to see how your piece fits in the entire puzzle. You have to clearly articulate this problem out of paper and on paper. If you're given a platform to speak about this research problem, you should be able to speak about it effectively. And also you should be able to express it on paper, as in writing. So you need to have everything around that particular problem. I'm not sure what kind of research problem you can have, but maybe it could be about malaria, and maybe you're looking for an effective way of screening for malaria outside the conventional methods that we have. So you need to have your problem, the malaria itself, and also the innovation that you may want to bring in to improve on the screening of the disease. Then the second thing you need to do is review the funding opportunities. Now that you have your research problem, you understand, you may need now to find the funding opportunities that align with your problem. After identifying the research problem, you may need to explore other grants. Those are the grants that will help you to achieve or to consider your research problem. You may need to review the grant call itself and what they are saying. They may ask you to give a detailed scope of your project, and you may also be able to look at the eligibility. You may find that the grant call is basically looking for people living in Kenya and working in Kenya. So you are literally in Uganda. That is not a fitting call for you. Or you may look at a call that is looking at people in Africa and you fall in Africa. So that one becomes a suitable call for you. So reviewing the eligibility saves you a lot of time. I've met some of my colleagues who have applied for grant calls that ignored the eligibility. Some of the calls were out of their scope and they couldn't meet the criteria, but anyway, went ahead to apply for these calls. So it saves you a lot of time and energy when you are able to review the call. You have to carefully read the call and the announcement opportunities. You look at the guidelines, and also you have to understand the submission requirements. Some of the submissions would require you to submit on to submit via a certain system. Others would want you to submit via email. So you may need to pay attention to those guidelines. Then the other thing is you have to pay attention to deadlines and also the evaluation, how long it will take for you to get your feedback. So we move on to the red zone, which is basically putting beef on your idea, which is developing a proposal. So when you come to developing the proposal, this is where you spend a great deal of time and energy. You spend a lot of time in this particular area. So you need to plan very early. And you remember you want to pitch a very strong proposal that competes against all the other applicants that may pitch their idea. So you want your idea to be sellable. You want to have a clear research question and clear objectives. You may want to write a good methodology, outcomes, and in a budget. Of course, those are some of the highlights. We'll have at the end of this session some examples where I will put everything in perspective. But this is just to bring you up to speed with the entire process. So the other thing that you may need to look out for when you're developing the proposal, you may need to do an intensive literature search. It may not be part of the actual proposal, but it's very important because it will give you the ideas to include in your proposal. So you need to do some sort of literature review, and you need to also align your idea in an appropriate time frame. So if you're looking for a micro-research grant that is running for 9 months, you may need to organize your idea to fit within those 9 months and not to go beyond. So this is the point where you'll have to clearly indicate how long you intend to conduct this study. And of course, you have to keep this in line with the funders' requirements. And you have to also think about collaboration. You cannot do research on your own. So when you're developing a proposal, remember at the beginning of the presentation, we talked about multidisciplinary. You may want to have other people on your team to help you sort of put your idea in perspective. They provide information that may be important to allow you win this grant. So you want to also look into collaboration, or if it is requiring only one individual, maybe it is an undergraduate research proposal that you're putting out, and let's say you don't have a team, you may want to give your mentors or people around you to read and see if your idea is actually competitive. Then the fourth is basically submission and follow-up. At this point, you'll be submitting your proposal. When you're submitting, you have to be careful of deadlines, especially. Submitting close to the deadline is very dangerous because sometimes you may find the systems have closed and you're not able to log in, or you've procrastinated your submission and you found some important information missing. and now at the end is when you're trying to fit it in. So you need to be cognizant of the timelines. They are very critical at this stage. So let's say you've successfully submitted. Yes, you may need to follow up. In some cases, you have to also bear in mind what the poll was saying in terms of how they'll give you the feedback. But it's also good to follow up, especially if you receive maybe a rejection and you'd want to know what happened, why you didn't actually get the call. You may need to follow up also. Managing the funds, this is the last stage in the whole process. At this point, this one only applies to those that have been awarded. The key activities in this area is basically reporting, giving progress reports on how the project is going, and also how you have managed the funds that have been awarded to you. So you may need to keep records of the expenditures that you have made during the time of receiving this money. So that one basically happens at that point. But of course, not very many people move on to the last stage, which is managing the awarded funds. Most people actually end at the submission and follow up, as there are more rejection rates than success rates in grants. And that is something you need to bear at the back of your mind so that you prepare yourself emotionally and not really put in your all. I've seen some people putting all their expectations on just an application they made, and at the end of that day, they can't make it to the last stage, and then they're frustrated. So this is an intense process. It requires you to be emotionally strong so that when you get negative news, you're able to pick yourself up and then move on to the next item. So that is something that you need to also have in the back of your mind. That said, we've mentioned, or we've spent a great deal of time talking about how to identify a research problem. And of course, I've given you some ideas on where you can look to see where you can get the research idea. But now you need to package it in such a way that it really gives you a good proposal at the end of the day. So we talk about the characteristics of a good research problem. Remember, from the research questions or research problems, we're able to get objectives. And so here you need to make sure that whatever you're considering is very specific. It is clearly defined and it focuses on a particular issue. I gave an example of trying to improve malaria screening. And let's say you want to come up with some sort of innovation or tool or item that you would want to use to effectively screen for malaria. And it is going to replace the conventional methods that are maybe otherwise more cumbersome, or maybe are invasive, or they are not accurate. So those are the ideas that you put. So you may be very clear on the area you want to study and define it very well. Measurable, you should be able to allow quantification or assessment of your progress in with that idea. It should be achievable, whereby it is realistic and attainable with the little resources. Remember, we are talking about micro research grants. So if you're given 10 million to do that particular project, is it enough? Is it sufficient to be done in, let's say, they want this outcome within 10 months? So is that money sufficient for you in 10 months to do that? So is it achievable? How have you designed your study to be conducted? Is it a longitudinal study that you need to follow up some people, or is it a one point in time, some sort of prevalence or sorts? So you may need to look into that. Then, is it relevant? Does it address a meaningful issue? For example, I said malaria, and malaria, of course, has diverse statistics. You can be able to look at the statistics of malaria. They are available on various resources where you can see that is a problem, and it is there, and it's relevant. Okay, like the area of study is relevant. Then time bound, as in, can be completed within a defined time frame, and I think I've already explained that. So there are some examples that we may want to look out for in laboratory medicine. I've talked about diagnostic challenges. Of course, I've given you an example of malaria and screening for it, but you can look out for so many other conditions and the diagnostic opportunities that you can get in that area. Okay, problems that you can get. Of course, in research, a problem is an opportunity because you're going to use that problem to write a winning proposal. Also, performance evaluation of new lab technologies. So you see right now there are so many technologies that are coming on board for various health challenges that we have, and some of them have not been evaluated in our setting. So you can look in that area and see how you can probably come up with some validation studies to validate these new technologies in your setting. But those are just some of the ideas. There could be very many ideas that you have, and you may want to lobby for funds in that area. So talking about that, there are some tools that you need, especially when you're trying to craft your good idea. You need to review literature. You need to throw yourself out into the internet, read as much papers as you can to see the gap, and then you're able to come up with a problem. You can also consult people who are the front line of this, maybe this particular condition that probably you want to develop in. So stakeholder consultations are very important, and also reviewing literature. They will help you to have a good research problem. Okay, so we have quiz 2, and I'll request us to participate. Which of the following characteristics best describe a SMART? Don't mind. A research objective. We have A, simple, marginal, affordable, reliable, transparent. B, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, or strategic, meaningful, adjustable, robust, targeted, structured. So you can go to the chat and drop your answers there. What do you think is what we refer to as SMART? This is just an acronym that we use when we are trying to talk about a research question or a research problem or research objective. What should it be like? So you may need to put your answers there. I don't know how much time I should give for people to put in their answers. I see the answers are coming in. And we're giving ourselves 30 seconds for this. So I'll just drop in the right answer there. It is B, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. We've spoken much about it in the previous slide. Okay, so where do we look for micro-research grants? I see some people say, where do I look? Where do I get these calls? Where do I find these places where there are these grants? Where can I pick them from? So we have local funding sources. Of course, when we talk of local funding here, I'm presuming that I'm talking to a big audience from Uganda, but there are so many places. Maybe there are people probably on the call who are in other countries, but from your area, your government, you can find some of these grant calls, as we shall review one of them at the end of this presentation. The Ministry of Health sometimes has this, I don't know why people are writing in the slides. I'm requesting Jeff, Ndagiri, and the like, people, you really mad these slides with a lot of, I don't know. Anyhow, so you can have local funding from the Ministry of Health. You can have from the National Council of Science and Technology. So you go to their websites and see these calls. Some of them are circulating on social media sometimes, but the best, before it gets to social media, it is probably the official place to look is their website that these organizations are. These are just two, but there could be other organizations within the country that have these local funds. Then also you may want to go to international levels. Some of the international funders are interested in local problems. So the National Institutes of Health, which is in the USA, can have some of these grants. Wellcome Trust, which is in the UK, can have some of these grants. African Academy of Science can also have some of these grants. And then also online platforms. There's ResearchGate, there's grants.gov. This is an American website that sort of archives or collects several grant calls in one place. And so you can take a tour there and see which call befits your kind of idea. Also, you may want to, I've not included this here, but you may want to sign up on some prominent social media platforms like LinkedIn. Actually, LinkedIn, you can use it for collaboration. Some of you are looking for mentors, networking. You may need to sign yourself up on such platforms to open you up to opportunities and people who are like-minded and are having the same idea with you. So you need to look there. So we have a quiz here. Which platform is best suited for finding international research grants? Do we go to ResearchGate? Do we go to Coursera? Do we go to Ministry of Health? Or do we go to grants.gov? Given the previous slide, if you are paying attention, you probably know the answer. Okay, the chat is very active, it's booming. I will just drop in the answer. I said grants.gov is an international platform that archives several grants. So you may need to look there to see that. So our next item is actually very important. It is writing a winning proposal. You want to win this grant. So what do you need to do to get this grant? So the first, we are going to go step by step. So we'll start by now you have the idea, you're crafting it. Of course, I had already mentioned prior that you need to have the problem. And then right now what I'm describing is what happens at stage 3, which is writing the actual proposal. So you need to have a title page. And on this title page, you should have very concise and captivating information right from the title itself. The title should be able to indicate the focus of the proposal and also be able to capture the reviewer's attention. Of course, I'm not telling you to put it like a bullet, a news headline, like a newspaper headline, not in that way. You need to, of course, exercise some scientific kind of language when you're writing your title, but the title should be very interesting and captivating so that it draws the attention of the person that will review it. The next thing there is the abstract. The abstract is sometimes referred to as a project summary or an executive summary, but it's basically a summary of key things, a summary of the research problem and its objectives. So you put those key elements in that abstract, and also probably add in the outcomes that you expect. We're having feedback. I don't know, someone should mute. Then the third is basically the introduction. And the introduction, you need to spend a great deal of time on this particular area because this is where you're chronologically going to put your idea. We shall have an example at the end of this slide, a real-time example. So in the introduction, you have to put the context, the significance, and the research gap in one place. That is the introduction. You will explain why the research is important and how it will fit into the broader field. That is because remember, you're not doing the bigger field, you're just doing a small component of a big thing. So you may need to see how your piece fits into that big puzzle, and you have to demonstrate this at that point. Then the other part will be the objectives. These ones are very, very important, and you need to align them to the SMART criteria we mentioned earlier. You need to clearly define the aims and the sub-objectives. So some of the aims can have sub-aims with them. So you may need to also put those sub-aims. And so you should make them to be very specific, measurable, and they should directly address the research problem right there. So you don't have to put objectives that are far-fetched and have no connection or connectedness, or they cannot even be measured at all. And maybe they are too ambitious and they don't fit into the whole thing that you are trying to do. Then the other part is the methodology. Now, the methodology, you spend a great deal of time here. This is where you'll have a lot of consultation as well. Because when you work on the methodology, this is where you're going to talk about the steps, the tools, and the techniques that will be used. You have to describe how the research will be conducted to achieve the objectives that you have listed previously. So some of the objectives require you to seek the help of a methodologist. I'm not sure if you know there are those kind of people. For them, they are just skilled in providing the appropriate methods to address the research questions. So there are those methodologists that can help you. When it comes to sample size calculation, for example, many people figure it around this area, but you may need to seek the help of a methodologist if you're not well versed with how the sample size is calculated. Even just identifying a study design, it can be a big issue. So you may need to also get help in that area. Budgeting, since we are talking about a grant, and these are not out-of-pocket grant funds, they are not your own funds. These are someone else's funds. Budgeting is a very important aspect. There are many people who have lost grants because they have failed to budget, or they have not learned the art of budgeting very well. So you need to throw yourself in and learn what it takes to have a good budget, especially for a grant call. You need to be transparent and justify every financial item that you have put there. We shall see in the future slides that some calls want you to put a budget and a budget justification, as in why do you need this money and to address which part. Then the other part will be the impact. Now, this is also a very important part. The impact can be also a bit slotted into the summary, because when you put your problem, you need to put the solution or how your project will be able to solve that particular problem. So you can slot it in a little bit of it in the abstract. Of course, when you're concluding your introduction, you need to also tell us exactly at the end of the day how this will help. So the expected outcomes and the benefits of the study that you want to do to the community, you need to bring them out there in the impact. Then the last part is basically the references. You need to cite credible sources that will help us to ground your idea and sort of see whether it aligns with what other people have been doing and how it can fit into the broader picture. So that is basically what you want to do on your proposal. Of course, it's not a one-size-fits-all. There are so many calls that come with different criteria and ideas, but most of them have that template that we just looked at. So we have a quiz here, quiz 4. Which of the following is not a key component of a grant proposal? And this is hinged on the previous slide, so you can quickly jot down your responses in the chat. All right, glance into the chat shows me that everyone sort of is in tandem. You're right, the answer is B. Yeah, the answer is B. So literature review is usually not a component of a grant proposal, but I need to put a disclaimer here. Some funding calls would want you to do a literature review as a section. They may say we want a 2-page literature review, so you don't have to knock it off completely, but in most cases, typical grant calls will want to just have the other items and they skip the literature review because they know you'll have to do it anyway when you're writing your publications and the like. So that is just that. So let us look out for the practical tips for the for the proposals. So with the practical tips, we have that you can align your research with the funder's priorities. So how do you do this? How do you align your research with the funder's priorities? The best way you can do this is taking a look at probably what other researchers that have been funded by that organization have been writing, as in what kind of calls have been going through. I recently applied for this RSTMH. I'm sure there are so many people, maybe even the ones that on the call, that have ever applied to RSTMH, the Royal Society of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. When you go to their website, you're able to see the kind of, from their reports, they're able to give you this information on how many people have been winning, the kind of projects that they pitched and they won. So from there, you can be able to see where the funders' priorities are. Because for such organizations, they may not have only one area to fund, they may have several areas, but you can use that to put yourself in perspective. Then you have to use clear, simple language and avoid jargons. There are some words that only apply to your setting and do not apply to the setting where the funder is. So you may need to bring yourself to the level of, the funder himself and use words or information or sayings that are common that people may be able to understand. Or if you perhaps put them down, you may need to explain them further and not assume that everyone actually understands what you're talking about. So that is a very important point also. Then you have to highlight local relevance and feasibility. You need to convince the reader, the reviewer, how your study will help the people around and how possible it is. One time I was very ambitious. I wanted to start a genomic bank, for example, and looking at our resources, our setting, how it will be realized. We don't even have enough trainings in genetic studies. So looking at this very ambiguous thing, there is no funder who's going to come from nowhere and inject money in something like that. So maybe if you want to convince them, that's now when the collaboration comes in. So you have to have some skills on how you can convince the funder that actually this thing can work. So you need to also apply some extra skills around that area. You have to include preliminary data if available. So you find that in the particular setting that you're going to have this work done, you may have maybe preliminary data that has been done, that preliminary work that has been done in that field, but did not address the kind of question that you want to address. So you can use that preliminary data that sort of aligns with your idea and then use it to justify your idea, how you want it to work. So you need to have preliminary data. A novice idea is usually hard to fund. That is the bottom truth. If something is new, of course, it becomes very, very difficult to have funders throwing their money in. So you may need to look for data around it and then you do it also. But with the micro research grants that we are talking about for some calls, you may have that you may now do the preliminary work and then do bigger grants to fund the continuum of that work. Then the other thing that actually cuts across anybody, even the skilled and the unskilled, is proofreading and seeking feedback before submission. We are in a community whereby everyone wants to work in isolation and maybe do the things and submit and then surprise everybody when they have won. But sometimes you may find that sharing would be the only thing that you needed to actually win that particular proposal. So you need to proofread the work. Proofreading, you may read it yourself, give it to a colleague, give it to another colleague, and see how you can pick up a good. Someone may see grammatical errors, others may see another thing that you didn't see, and they're able to help you before you send in your work. So these are some of the tips you can have. Of course, there could be very many others that people could give you, but at least having these together, reading the funders' call and understanding their priorities, using clear language, showing how your problem is going to benefit the people in your community. Is there preliminary data to support it? And proofreading it. Those are very important points. Then we have a quiz here. I apologize for all those that don't like exams, but I think this is what helps us to make meaning out of a CPD. So here is another question that would sort of call us to use our chat. What is the best way to align your research proposal with the funder's priorities? 1, focus on a global health issue without tailoring it to local relevance. Use complex jargon to impress the funder, or review the funder's mission, vision, and past funded projects. Submit multiple proposals to different funders simultaneously. I know very many people who do this. So let me just quickly peep into the chat and see what people are saying. Lots of B, lots of C. Okay, so people are saying C. Let's see what is in for us. Well, you got it right. Review the funder's mission, vision, and past funded projects. This is very, very key so that you can be able to win that particular grant. Okay, so we are still talking about grants for those that just maybe logged in and found us on an exercise. And we want to look at effective budgeting strategies. Components of a micro research budget. So now with budget, since we are talking about funds, we need to see how we can handle the budget issues. Some of the key components that you cannot miss on any given budget. You know that your idea, you will not drive it alone. So you will not pocket the money and go and do this thing alone. You may need personnel. So personnel, these are people who are very critical to the idea or the project that you are trying to pitch. When we say personnel, we want you to get, we are thinking of skilled personnel. Sometimes we want to use minimal resources. You're supposed to hire maybe a nurse. Sorry, you're supposed to hire maybe a doctor, but then you get a nurse. You're like, this one will do. And you compromise on the quality of the work that you're going to do. Not saying that the others are lesser, but may find maybe it requires another type of expertise. Or maybe I would say nursing, you need a nurse, but particularly you need a midwife, but you go and get a general nurse. Somehow it sort of compromises. So when you're doing your budget, you need to take care of that. Then also remunerating personnel. So you may find that you have low costed the remuneration for personnel, and yet ideally that kind of caliber or labor of a person that you have requires a certain amount of money. So you need to look at the politics surrounding personnel and make sure that you allocate appropriate funds. Some funders actually can see a green flag when you give a particular, maybe a small amount of remuneration to a particular personnel whom they expect to be getting something bigger. And so that's how they get concerned. And some people have lost it at the level of the budget. Supplies. We allow people, and sometimes we are, we are faced with lots of supplies. You are writing this proposal and you are using, let's say, a particular company X. You've budgeted using maybe Cypress Diagnostics. And later, when you're going to execute your project, you have facilities that use Beckman Coulter and the reagents are way up in the cost of those reagents are so high. So you need to consider your supplies, and you need to project and see if I am going to use this kind of supplies, I need to get the right costings for them so that they don't lead to out-of-pocket funding at the time of execution if you make it. Then travel and logistics, these are some of the things that are usually afterthoughts. Some people don't realize that maybe they'll need to travel and disseminate their findings, so they don't include it. But you need to include it because also you may need to move from one place to another to procure these supplies. So travel is also very important, and you need to have a miscellaneous expense because there are so many other unseen costs that can come. The common mistakes that people make around budgeting is underestimating their costs, the costs of underestimating costs of items. And I've already given examples around this. You use a low supply to budget for something that you later find yourself requiring a higher cost for. So you may need to have yourself conversant with the costings of the supplies and so many other things. Then the second other common mistake is failing to justify these expenditures. Of course, we have a lot of dishonest people who will probably just get receipts from anywhere and confuse the funder, but that is a very bad practice. You may need to have every item justified with the money as to why you need that particular thing. Yeah, I bring you another breather, which is a quiz 6. What is the primary challenge in budgeting for micro research? The primary challenge in budgeting, we just discussed challenges. Is it including personnel costs? Personnel costs? Is it estimating and justifying costs accurately? Is it adding miscellaneous expenses or listing travel expenses? We can use the chart to put the right answer. What's the primary challenge? What's the challenge that is faced by very many people as they try to go on with budgeting? I'll peep into the chat, see what the people are saying there. Okay, we have a lot of mixed answers here, including personnel costs. Maybe this person didn't get it well, but I see now some answers coming through, and I think it is B. Yes, estimating and justifying costs accurately. This is the most common challenge that happens around budgeting. People fail to justify and also to estimate the actual costs of things that they want to. You may think that budgeting is an easy thing, but it is it's not, because some of the calls that you find, they say maybe up to £50,000, up to £20,000, or up to 20 million. So you may think that it is easy because you may account for only you may need only 15 million to do your thing. So it is very important that you know all the issues around budgeting. Okay, so how do we overcome these challenges that we have mentioned? It's not good that we can identify these challenges and not have a solution around them. So the first thing that we need to sort of do to help ourselves is to start early and plan. Limited time for preparation will make you to make those mistakes that we just talked about. So when you start early, of course, you can start actually maybe at the end of a certain cycle. Say, for example, there was a grant call, people applied, they won, you understand? And they are going to run another one. So you probably say, I'll apply next year. So you start this year if you're going to apply next year. It gives you enough time to plan your idea, plan how you're going to engage so many people, stakeholders, do literature review, work out the budgeting costs and all that. So you have enough time. And you need to also avoid procrastination because it will help you to be focused. Then you have to, the other thing is the lack of experience. So if you have this challenge of not having enough expertise and experience around an idea, You may need to leverage mentorship and training. So there are so many people who have probably gone ahead of you in that area that you'd want to work on. You may need to reach out to them and ask them for their input so that they can help you. Remember, I said that mentorship, you can get mentorship from many places. You can identify mentors from probably your former school, or you can get them from social media like LinkedIn profiles and all that. Or you can get them from even the research papers that you're reading. Maybe their work is moving you and you need to connect with them so that you can participate in their work. You can get mentors from conferences, um, and so many other forums. There is a meet and greet that's coming up for UMLTA. You may need to go and meet up with people who are, who can mentor in that area. Okay, then we have rejections. So we are seeing how we can overcome these challenges. When you get a rejection, you need to learn from what has happened. For some funders, they're able to give you feedback on what made your proposal not to really be successful. So if you're able to get that information, then you can revise your proposal, and then you can probably try again next year or pitch it in another forum or another call, embedding the information, embedding the corrections that you might have received from them. Okay, so reporting and accountability, this is specifically for if you have actually got the grant itself. You may need to prepare yourself for the post-award responsibilities, and one of them will include regular progress reports to funders. So when the funders give you the money, they are not going to give you the ideas on how you'll execute your project, some of them. So they will give you the money and they would want you to report on how things are going. So you'd expect some sort of progress reports that you need to prepare from time to time to account. Then also proper documentation of your expenditures, some of these receiptings that you have because they want to see value for money. If there is no evidence that money was spent and also maybe there is no work that has been done, that becomes a very big challenge. So you need to keep a file specifically for expenditures. And also sharing findings through publication or presentation. So some of the things you'll be involved in when you probably win the grant, you'll be involved in writing publications and also making presentations and all that. Okay, so we are going into another interesting session, which is a brief description of a micro-research call and project. So what I've prepared is in such a way that I'm going to share a call that I applied to and won it, and I'll give a little ideas on what I did and what I prepared. And then we shall also look at a current call that is running. It may not necessarily be in lab, but it has a component that can allow you, especially those that are interested in digital health, to apply like an active call. So this was a call I think I applied for around 2022. It was a seed grant. Seed grant is more like a micro research grant that we are discussing right now. And one of the things that the funders were looking for, one of the things when you get a call, the first thing you need to look out for is the money. How much money is being given? So this helps you to organize yourself. It will help you to organize yourself in terms of how far you can go with your idea. And so you can see the money, and then what are the other nitty-gritties they're looking for? They're looking for multidisciplinary, meaning you cannot work in isolation. You need several other people to be on board. And then they have what they call themes. So when they have these themes, the themes are looking at different areas that you can fit your idea in. So you can see that there is smart structures, digital technology innovations. This was one of them. There is basic clinical translational research science. That's another one. There's population and public health research. That's another theme. So as people who are trying to learn how to write these grants, always see where your idea fits in the funder's call. before you actually engage. Uncover the I think that was a missed one. Okay, there was this one: gender and health, governance, migration, community development for sustainable development. That's another theme. Agriculture for food security, sustainable resilient livelihood development. That's another one. And then changing natural resources management, environment, and the like. Fostering business. So if you have a business related idea, you have entrepreneurship, higher education and quality assurance. One thing you need to see is all these calls are somehow all the themes are fitting into our sustainable development goals. So if you had an idea that was in line with the sustainable development goals, then you probably would be able to at least identify a theme for yourself in such a call. So in that same call, they stated the eligibility. So you needed to be probably associated with Mbarara University or Mbarara General Hospital in a way for you to be able to apply for this call. So you cannot come from the community and become a PI of this particular call. So you need to also look at these calls very well, otherwise it will not work. So this is where now I have to make this disclaimer. Now sometimes you may have an idea and you're not part of that eligible group, but you know someone who is in that eligible group. You may pitch your idea through them so that they become the PIs, but you become a co-PI. And so you're able to have your idea out there as well. So it is not that when you find that you're not needed, you may need to find people who are fitting that criteria, and then they can help you see how you can organize your thoughts in that line. They also mentioned the deliverable. You should have what? You should have a peer-reviewed publication. That was what they wanted at the end of the call, and also a policy brief. So, and then they were generous and provided how to apply section. So in this how to apply section, they provided the how you should organize your proposal. They wanted it in this kind of MS, Times Roman, singular spacing. So if you go ahead and you start putting your different calligraphies that are not lining up with this, you increase your chances of being rejected. So it is very important that you pay attention to the instructions that they have given. So then they went ahead to give us the place to submit, which is right here. So you know that after preparing your document, you have a particular email to send your work to. For some people, they will send you to a particular system. So there is the research themes of interest. The research theme of interest, where your work falls, you needed to state that. You needed to have the title of the research. Remember, when we're talking about a winning proposal, the title should be captivating, should speak to the proposal itself. You understand? So this is some of the instructions that they provided. The research problem. And so I'm going to show you in the next slide what I had as my research problem. And that would be the example I'll show for all these. Then the objectives, the significance. The objectives, you needed to state the research objectives and expected outputs. For the significance, you need to explain how your research project will address a gap or build upon the existing knowledge, as well as its relevance to the contemporary issues in the field. Then the methods. So you can see that all these things, we've mentioned them in the other image that I showed you. So one thing they added that probably I didn't put, which is not actually standard, but it is important, is the motivation. Why are you pursuing this particular research project? Why are you the correct team to undertake this research project? Because this was a multidisciplinary call, so it was working with teams. If it was an individual, they would probably be asking why you are interested in that. You explain your interests and state the potential benefits you anticipate to acquire from the research project. Then the dissemination plan, which is usually not given much attention, but yet it's very important because this is the only place where you will show that the money actually achieved its purpose. Describe the plan of sharing the findings of study to academic and non-academic research users. course, they had gender. So some of these things are not common to all other calls, but they are there. Multidisciplinary, you needed to describe your team and what each one is bringing on the table. References, you needed to provide a budget and a budget justification. We've spent a lot of time talking about this. You needed to state your short and long-term goals. This was very important because this was a micro-research grant. So you needed to state your short, because the short-term goals will probably be met by these funds, but then your long-term goals will have the provision of applying for some sort of bigger grant to fill that small grant. Then you also needed to submit a CV that would show your competence and if you're able to do that. Then they had the key dates, which were very important. Of course, these key dates, like we said, they're the ones that help you in the third stage, in the fourth stage that I showed earlier of follow-up, of submission and follow-up. So if you needed to follow up, at least you may have to consult these dates and know, is it appropriate for me to ask questions? Why they are not giving me feedback? So if you find that maybe they are still, the dates haven't yet reached, there's no need for you to actually engage. So you need to wait. Then they provided the contacts, the people you'd probably reach out and talk to in case things were not clear for you. Most calls have that. So this is the problem I pitched. I'll not read everything here. I've just summarized here. Or the research problem that I had some statistics there and also showed the gap, a little bit of the gap right here. But of course, before you bring in your problem, you need to tell us about the status of things because you may probably say, for example, malaria is diagnosed via a blood slide, a thick smear in our setting, and maybe there is the RDTs are not usually available, blah, blah. So I'm proposing this kind of idea. So you need to give people the kind of, they need to know what is happening currently so that they know where you come in, where you fall in. And that is very, very important. So I did that in this paragraph. Then what you're going to do about it, now that you have showed us the gap, then you have to, at least in a sentence or so, because they give you a limited number of words, you may need to talk about what you're going to do. So for me, this was a digital technology that I was trying to bring up to overtake a paper-based record that is being used in a health facility. Yeah. Of course, I went ahead to explain in detail how the digital technology would work in case it is developed. So because this was a micro-research grant, I was probably going to use the digital technology to, I was going to pilot it. I was going to sort of develop the architecture and then also pilot it. So in that case, I was able to do that and in my writing up. But at the end of the day, you can see that you have like you're able to sell your idea from top to bottom. And this was like the short term. The short term is that you're going to develop the portal and then like the digital technology, and then you're going to pilot it. Then after that, you may need to scale it. So scaling the technology may require bigger funds, and that becomes a long-term goal. Yeah, of course, dissemination. We talked about dissemination of findings. You need to disseminate your work so that people get to know how they are doing. So right now, I'm going to go into an ongoing call. We are going to look at the ongoing call. Through this call, we'll be able to see if we can align the grant writing processes that we have learned. It may not be befitting to many people, but like I said, it's just an example. So if you have an idea in digital technology, you may want to look at it. So I think some of you have seen this call, but we can take it step by step right here and see if we can apply for it after this meeting. So this is a call from the Uganda Communications Commission. It's a research support to people in academia or people who are undertaking any course. You can see that they have done it just as the previous call that I have demonstrated. They give us a preamble on who they are, and then they listed the kind of themes that they are going to fund. So if you have any idea that falls within these themes, then you can pitch it. Of course, for us in lab, I would see ourselves in number 4, where they're talking about emerging technologies in health or in education, if you are in that, or in culture or oil gas. There are other themes depending on your idea and how you view things. So you may have to take time and look at those different themes. Then also pay attention to the eligibility that they have given. So with this eligibility, for anyone here who is a student, they can probably see that they are considering all levels of students, the graduate students, the postdoctoral researchers, graduate students looking at master's, PhD, post-PhD, undergraduate, all people who fit, then also academic staff, or graduate or postgraduate students can all apply. Then they are looking at the research support. Since they have those different categories, they decided to sort of divide their cash or their money depending on the level of education, the level of pursuit. If you are probably an undergraduate researcher, you'll be vouching for money around this amount. And it would depend if you are doing it as an individual in your specific discipline to be 10, and if it's interdisciplinary to be 20. That's for undergraduate researchers. If you're postgraduate researcher, you may need to look at this. And if you are inter-university research collaborations, you may need to look at this. And then if you are to support research by academia for industry, you may have to look at this kind of money. So the call is out there. You can find it on all websites. On the website of UCC, you'll find it there. Lucky for us, the deadline is 28th Feb, close to a month away from now. So in my opinion, I think if you've been a student and you probably know research here and you have an idea that fits around what the funder is looking for, you can pitch for these guys and see how it goes. They have been kind and provided the address, so you can still use this address to reach out for extra information and also address whatever documents they want you to provide. Now, the next part here that they have details how you should structure your proposal. You don't have to bring it the way it is in your academic work and throw it in. You need to organize it based on the funder's requirements. The funder says they want a title page and how it should be. They also want a project summary, which is like the abstract, and they want it in a certain format. Then they want an introduction and background, which you also have to provide in 2 pages, a problem statement. Then you need to provide the research questions and objectives, the hypothesis, if it's applicable, the justification. Then they are also trying to look at the methodology, how you're going to execute your work, the implementation plan, and the contribution to cross-cutting issues. They are now looking at the other issues that are up and running in the community that are cutting across the entire globe. So you may want to see how your research fits and helps in that area. Now here they also want a literature review, and these have been specific. They want it, so you have to provide it. Then you have to, of course, when you're doing literature review, you have to consider referencing. This is another thing altogether. Budget and budget justification, we talked about this. And then your CV, because it shows credibility. Then there are restrictions, the kind of things you shouldn't include in your proposal. You don't have to ask for reimbursement of expenses. The research funds cannot support infrastructure. If you're proposing to build a small lab for the facility, it may not work in this call. If costs such as fees, stipend salaries, these are not allowed. Applicant has a priority if he or she has not received prior funding. So if, let's say, you are already funded, you cannot partake this call. Support more than one student delivering the same presentation abroad. So you could be abroad. Let's say you're in South Africa, you're under funding, and then you want to also take the same funding here. That's not applicable. The funding Okay, these were instructions for those undergraduate students, postdoctoral students. But now, if let's say you're an academic staff somewhere or a postdoctoral student, number 2 has the restrictions you can look at. Then here, the notification, they are telling us that the call has been disseminated to various sites, so you can look up social media and find it and be able to understand it before you apply. Administration of the research support to academia, this is how they will support you and how you'll be able to account should you win the grant. Then on completion of the research project, have to disseminate the research findings during a scheduled conference or a workshop. You have to publish at least 1 article in a peer-reviewed journal. You need to submit your article in the repository of UCC. You need to provide evidence that you're a student. If you're going to say that you're going to apply as a student, you need to provide evidence that you're a student. That you have graduated from the program as a result of the funds that were awarded to you. You need to submit end of project report, that is the closeout at the end of the. So they've given you the closing date, 31st October 2025, meaning this grant is going to close by 31st October. So you need to put this in mind when you're designing the entire research project. So all proposals will be subjected to administrative review, shortlisting of qualifying applicants, selection of a selection committee. They have not been able to tell us the exact dates these items will take place, but this is what is going to be happening. So we have a quiz. Guys, we are coming to the end of our presentation, so you can bear with us. Which of the following is a common mistake in grant writing? Quickly go to the chat and help me find the right answer using clear and simple language. Is that the commonest mistake? Highlighting the relevance of your research, submitting the proposal without proofreading, including preliminary data. Which one do you think is the most what? Challenging issue for most people? Right, I think everyone has got it. It is C. Most people submit for, let me use that word. I'm not sure if my colleagues who are not Ugandan will understand. Submitting for just like that, before proofreading and all that, sort of puts you at that risk of having your project rejected. Okay, what is an essential post-award responsibility of a researcher? What is the thing that, let's say you've got these funds, what's the expectation at the end? Is it seeking additional grants immediately? Is it regularly reporting progress and expenses to the funder? Is it publishing findings without acknowledgement of the funder? Is it expanding the project scope without permission? I would think the answer is a bit obvious. So let me see what the chat people can put. Okay, everyone is putting B, and I think that's the answer. Thank you, people, for question. Just give me a minute. Yeah, so regular reporting progress and expenses to the funder is what we would call accountability. So the most activity you'll be engaged in, should you have these funds, is basically to account for those funds. Then I needed to talk about tools. You need to be a tech person if you're going to be able to manage this process. So we are in an era that relies so much on technology, and you need these smart tools to make it somehow. So there is an image here that you can use to see some of the tools that you need. You don't need all of them. You just need like one for each area. You need to have like one that can make you escape a particular area. If it is literature search, you may want to know, of course, some of the ones I use are not listed in this image, but I've used Research Rabbit before. These days we have large language models, and the one that is notoriously known is ChatGPT, but you may need to also look out for others. Grammar and paraphrasing, this is very important because poor grammar impedes flow. So it nags someone they can use it actually to put you off. So you need to pass your write up in a particular a tool that can help you to check for English, or you can use even people who have English as their first language to help you. Citations, there is Zotero and Mendeley. These are free online. You can have them and learn them. At least have one. If you know Mendeley, it's okay. If you know Zotero, it's okay. I've not used JabRef, but you can have EndNote as well. You can have as many tools as you can. Illustrations, nowadays you need to summarize your content in some sort of figure to give the impression that you can, compound your idea in one place, and there's that connectedness. So there are so many tools that can be used for that. Qualitative and quantitative data analysis. For quantitative, there is R, there is SPSS. Nowadays, people have Python, they have SAS, they have Stata. So you may need to get at least one tool. You need to be having skilled with at least one tool that can help you navigate quantitative data analysis. For qualitative, you can have Atlas, in vivo, Otter, any of those, and that predictability. Another thing that is very key is networking. So if you're not networking, it's very hard for you to get the mentors that we have been emphasizing, because these mentors are the ones that are going to help you to sort of maybe identify the conferences or the workshops, or they are going to maybe sponsor you, or probably give you some kind of exposure that you need to maybe have a winning proposal, or even execute your proposal should you have the funds. Guys, this could be the last one. I'm sorry for probably frustrating you with so many questions, but this is probably one of the last. What is the most important quality of a research problem for micro research? It is globally recognized. Remember, we are talking about micro research. Is it A? It aligns with personal interests only. Is that true? It addresses a specific and feasible local issue. It requires large-scale funding. What would you think is the right answer here for a micro research problem? Let me just peep into the chat to see the kind of answers and have. We are almost going into our Q&A. Okay, so that is C. Everyone says it's C. It shows that people are just a minute. Not sure why my so it is that you'd actually use to base on to get maybe to feed into the other things. So the key takeaways are micro research is impactful and achievable. You can actually achieve it. A strong, clear proposal increases your chance of success. And then continuous learning and collaboration are very essential. We have some resources here that you would, when you get access to these slides, you'll be able to look at some of these resources. I'm not talked about so many things because you cannot exhaust research basically in just one meeting. So there are some resources you would find from the NRIMS and UNCST. You can look up also other information online that talks about grant writing. I'd like to acknowledge UMLTA and Allied Health Professionals Council, Aslam and all the people that have made this happen. And just before you go, I have this announcement. If any of you needs any help available, you can screenshot this if you're using a phone and keep it so that you can reach out on these lines. If you need any of these helps, we could discuss. So that is it. Thank you all for staying around. So I hand over to you, moderator, to take us through the next session.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kiconco, Rita, for that very, very comprehensive presentation. And thank you for keeping us engaged through the question and answer sections. So at this point, we will start with our question and answers. So we now have time for questions. If there are still some questions, please feel free to type them in the chats and we'll get to them. And also, I will also ask that if time permits, I would also like to invite some of our senior professionals who might be in the audience and who may want to also contribute some additional thoughts to today's discussions. So I will just randomly pick some questions that are there or comments. And I would really like to start probably with what I can say a frustration that was being shared by someone who says they are good at identifying gaps and writing proposals, but whenever I submit them, they pass but get implemented by other organizations or people. I am now demotivated. I wrote one for COVID and one for TB and leprosy. So I don't know, Dr. Kiconco, if maybe based on your experience as well, what kind of advice can you provide to this person who seems demotivated, but the good thing is that they seem to have grasped the art of writing grants and visibly getting them.
Okay, sorry. First of all, sorry for that. It's a very unfortunate society that we live in, as we cannot really know who is having integrity and who is not. But one thing we had in our discussion here, I'm not sure if you remember what I said on that slide. Sorry, I'll again stick to the slides that I shared about rejection. And I mentioned that grant writing is an emotional, it's an emotional venture. You may need to brace yourself because lots of things happen and you need to be very strong. So there are some things that you cannot, you don't have your control over. For example, he mentioned that his idea was executed by the same funding group that had put out the call. That really happens a lot, but I think one thing we need to do also is to sort of maybe team up. That's why we mentioned that you need to collaborate. So you need to work maybe if you can't beat them, you join them. So you probably need to identify maybe people in that maybe mentors in that area. So it requires a lot of planning. You need to be very deliberate, but you don't have to give up. I'm happy that at least you've taken an effort and you have applied, but maybe you're doing it well, but you may need to change on the tactics this time around. So try to maybe see how you can collaborate with them or find someone who is in that organization that you can work with. And you can start out by being part of the team, even if you are the champion of the idea. But you may want to lay low a little bit, and then later you can blossom. So that's what I can say in that case for that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kichoncho, for that. I think maybe there's some few colleagues who might have joined a bit late. There are some questions related to how someone can get such grants. So definitely, as indicated, we will be sharing the presentation with everyone so that they can get to find out as that was covered. This time I would also like to acknowledge some few hands that are raised. I will start with Dr. Benson Musinguzi. I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. And then after Dr. Benson, we will have Machoka Faizo. Please, Dr. Benson, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you, my HOD Rita, for this elaborate presentation. Apologies, I've joined slightly late. I was on a travel, but one of the comments or two that really is of emphasis is teamwork, having a collaborative approach, because starting from the last person's question, at most cases, if you're a junior researcher, you must work with senior researchers, and the junior researcher, you do a lot of donkey work, but trust me, it's very hard to be a PI of your project. So at most cases, you must have a very strong team, a very strong collaboration, and this also comes with the funders. For instance, if it is NIH, MRC, sometimes the requirement that the main PI comes from probably European countries. So if you don't have one, and I have a similar idea like yours, and I have a collaborator from those countries, trust me, my project will win, and yours may fail because of the team. So the issue of the team is really very, very important. Then secondly, probably must have mentioned it, the issue of preliminary data. At most cases, I would still take it to the lab. So we generate a lot of data in the lab. We do a lot, we keep all that work in the shelves in the lab. But if we don't put that data out there, probably through publications, through preprints, then trust me, it becomes very hard to win when there is no preliminary data to show that there is probably a problem that you want to anticipate. So what I may encourage most of our colleagues to do, the little research you have done, the little data you have, find a way of putting it online. So at the end of the day, if you say we have found this problem and we want to solve it this way, someone can have a traceability of that challenge. So you may not directly publish in case it is too early, but let's have a preprint out there that is showing that there is this and we want to solve this challenge. Otherwise, if the challenge is not known, probably globally it's online, then it becomes very, very hard. Then I would also wish that Chichonjo shares with us, probably how have you been handling the collaboration, especially where you have to implement someone's interest. You have this grant. The grant is saying we need you to do this and this. These are the don'ts. By the end of the day, probably it is it's against your probably against your culture. We have seen that. Or you know that this is a problem in our setting, but the funder tells you that for us, what we need is this. We want you to implement this, not that. And it's the owner of the money. So how have you been handling such? Then too, where they say the PI must have a collaborator from European countries or from US, from UK, in case the money is coming from US. How have you been handling, or how would you advise someone who doesn't have such a collaborators? Thank you. I hand over back to the moderator.
Thank you so
Okay,
much. Yes, please go ahead, Rita.
Can I respond? Okay, thank you, Benson, for the additions. What you have said is very important. I don't know whether I've not overemphasized collaboration, especially local collaboration, because it starts right here. Because when you start thinking about, of course, now it depends at the level you're at. Finished your bachelor's degree and you found yourself in a health facility, I'm sure there are some people within that health facility that are interested in research. You may want to sit on their teams and then have research on them. Even if you have the idea, you have to look at the bigger picture, because at the end of the day, your name will also, your idea will provide the preliminary information that he said that you will use to pitch your bigger idea, because research is supposed to be continuous. If it starts and stops, then you probably have a wrong idea. And we've not talked about idea generation very well, but an idea should be sustainable, should have like that sort of, is feeding into something else. And that's why they usually ask you for your short and long-term goals. So about international collaborations, because we're talking about micro-research, I really centered my presentation on what we can do right within our setting. But if people are really interested in international collaboration, sometimes you need to invest. For example, there are international conferences, and you can organize yourself to probably submit an abstract. For example, the International Diabetes Federation puts up a call, and you may need to go there, or they sometimes have funding for good abstracts. So you may find yourself, going. So you may need to submit an abstract and probably be picked on to go. And when you go, you're able to connect with people who are in position and can help you. Then he said the other issue of the funder wanting you to execute their idea. And I think we talked about it, I don't know where, but we even had a quiz on it. Not sure where I have put it, but we talked about what you need to do when it comes to connecting with funders, I think it is here. Review the funder's mission, vision, and past funded projects. So if you're really going to throw yourself into that particular funder, because by the way, there are very many people who are funding research, but if you take on one, you need to embrace yourself on not only the call itself, you need to go beyond the call and look out for other things, because some of these things are not really put in the call. But for example, the past funded project, what kind of projects are they funding? You need to know these projects so that before you put up your idea in that area, and then they are pushing you in a certain direction, if you're even getting the chance to do that, because some good funders don't really give you that kind of audience. So you may need to know more about the funder and organize yourself. So if you also find that you don't have a particular eligibility criteria, we talked about this when we were talking about the eligibility, whereby, for example, they are saying that you should have a mentor, or you should have someone on the team who is a faculty in a university in Washington, or in America, or something like that. You need to see that you connect yourself there. This could be a person you can meet even on social media. I talked about social media platforms like LinkedIn, or not many people actually are on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, they are on Facebook and they are on those Instagram. But if you go to a platform where you get people who are doing the right thing, then you're able to write to them, interest them in yourself and your ideas, and then before you know it, you have formed a connection. Sometimes you don't need me or someone who is physical to be the one to connect you, because some people have met people who are interested in their ideas from just those online platforms. So that can be another area for you to go and network and be able to see that your idea is pitched for a grant in a place where they are asking for that kind of criteria.
Thank you very much, Rita. And thank you once again, Dr. Benson, for that additional inputs. Very helpful. I see that Machoka also has a hand up. Please go ahead, Machoka.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I am Machoka Faizu Mbale Clinical Research Institute. Thank you, Madam Rita, for that elaborative talk. Now, I have around the 3 questions. The first question is about the budget. Now, some causes have a value they put, for example, they can say funding of around 10,000 euro. So now when I'm making this budget, am I supposed to put to be in line with 10,000 to budget exactly for 10,000, or I can as well do slightly high or slightly low? For example, I can put budget. I can put a budget of around 99,000. I think 9 point something, or I can put slightly higher. Then question number 2 is about, is it okay to apply to submit 2 proposals in a single call? Then question number 3. Of recent, I had a call on TDR, tropical disease or poverty, and they were talking about monitoring and evaluation of the project. So I think, Madam Rita, I'm requesting you elaborate more about the monitoring and evaluation of the project. Then lastly, like now TDR, it had a very short timeline. They announced the call in so it is somehow hard for some in such a call. Thank you very much. I remain Machoka Faizu.
Thank you very much, Machoka. I'd like to say, just highlighting that the first question you asked is similar to what I think Richard Ngoruziza also asked on the chat. So please.
Okay. Thank you, Faizo. Faizo is my former student. Let me just sort of talk about what he raised. He raised 1, 2, 3, and maybe I have questions. Okay, so the first one is about capping your budget. Some want to cap it low to play safe, others want to cap it high so that they don't lose out. But it's very important that you stay within the confines of the money. You understand? When they say up to, it means it cannot go beyond the 10,000. So if it is 10,000, you may need to write, someone needs to mute. Okay. So you need to put your budget to around 10,000, the 10,000 that they have put. Of course, keeping it at is it 999,000? Is it? I don't know. You may be doing it to play safe, but still with that, I think you're still within. If you under budget, you raise a red flag. And if you over budget, it's also a red flag. You may need to stay at the cap that they have given you. Or you may need to also consult, you may need to use it as an opportunity. If the call is not clear, especially around the money, you may need to use it as an opportunity to engage the person in charge of the call and ask how far you can go with that. Because, sometimes you'll be like, everything is clear to you and you don't know you want to make contact. But that's a tactful way to make contact with the funder and sort of maybe discuss how far you can go with that. But of course, remember I talked about the budget justification. Every item you put there should be reasonable and should be meeting up. So if you underfund a critical item that even the funder knows is of a certain cost, that is also a red flag. So you have to make sure that the funds that you're putting are the whole world will know that this is the money, this is actually worth. But if you overshoot on specific items, that's where you are caught up. Then, should you submit 2 proposals in one call? This is also another dangerous thing. Some calls actually indicate that if you put 2 calls, you'll be automatically disqualified. Why is that so? These people have what they call reviewers. So if you load them with too much, you understand, they are trying to even source for reviewers to review the proposals. So if you put too much, sometimes they don't have even the resources to review those very many protocols or proposals. So you're only entitled to only one. And also it shows focus, because if you pitch 2 of them, it means that you're here and there. But one is safe, and I think you should cut on your appetite, or you probably throw it in a different call, just as it is with journals. When you're submitting a journal, you cannot have 2 submissions in the same journal at the same time. Some journals have that kind of criteria. So you may need to first maybe go through with one and then you pursue another one, or you can pursue in the same publishing house, but at a different, not the same journal, the same, like you're putting 2 at the same time. Some journals don't like it. Then monitoring and evaluation of the project. This is what we spent time talking about, accountability. So the funder, this is the only activity you'll get to do should you win the funds. And you need to start it on how you're going to provide this feedback, to this constant feedback on how you're executing your project. So monitoring and evaluation of the project is required in the proposal, but it will play a very important role in making a decision on your proposal, because it is what you're going to do most of the time should you get that project. Then about the short deadlines. This is what I said when I said you need to plan early when we're talking about the challenges. And I gave you an example of how you can do this. For example, TDR right now has made its call, but you may find that they have this as a 5-year kind of program. So you may want to say, let me forego this year, you understand? And I use this year to plan my proposal so that when they release the call next year, I'm ready to submit. So that's the thing with grants. You don't have to be on pressure. Because when you do on pressure, like how we do with other things, most cases it's going to be wasted energy. So you may want to look at the deadline, look at the call, go and see what they are doing. You know, you have to research the funder very well. And if you realize there is opportunity for the next call, usually NIH has those things that the next call will be this time what. So you get to use this particular call to plan your grant. Then after that, when the next time comes, you will be more ready than the person who is realizing it at that point. That's what I can say. You plan if it is really important for you, you may need to forego the call if that has a short deadline and wait for the next cycle. Those are cycles in grants. I think I've answered all the questions for Machoka.
Thank you so much, Rita. That is great. I'll just also ask just a few questions that have been asked on the chats. The first one also related to what you just mentioned about the M&E aspects. Steve in Dimboa is asking, can I apply? And Oloya Patrick has asked, how can we align climate change into health-related problems so that one can win the grants there?
Okay, let me start from. I don't know for climate change. There are so many ways now. This is idea generation and see what the literature is saying. So for example, I'm just giving an example. You'd find that maybe I've taken a training on pollution and health challenges, especially for chronic diseases. So you'd find that right now there are some people that measure air quality. There are some private companies that measure the air quality within cities. And those people have some data that you can probably use to relate to the chronic diseases that maybe like COPD, the coronary pulmonary diseases that are occurring in children, maybe in a given facility. So you can see that maybe some of the climate, the activities that people are doing, maybe there's a lot. That is idea generation, and it requires you to sit down, organize your thoughts very well, but there is always a link into something. There is always a way. The climate basically directly affects our health. So you can still find health and climate change having some sort of relationship, and you can get an idea there. Log frame, yes. A log frame is a tool that you can use as well to talk about your monitoring and evaluation. Of course, some people have I think there are lots of resources that can show you what to include in your log frame and maybe to make it more justifiable and realistic, as in whether it can really work. But a log frame can be a tool that you can use in M&E. I think that is it. Yeah.
Yes, no, great. I think we have a number of questions, but I think I would then just ask the last question. Also coming